This video won't be about dopamine and scientific research. Instead, we will take the perspective of someone who wants to improve their understanding of themselves through consumption of spiritual and personal development related material. During my research for this video, I came across 3 major drawbacks of immersing oneself in a continuous stream of information. But on the flip side, I also discovered one major advantage to immersing yourself in this stream. I lived for many years as a Buddhist monk in the Theravadan tradition, and there's a theme that our life and our time is very limited and really important. So we need to maximize the amount of information or wisdom that we gain in this lifetime so that we can have a better lifetime in the next life. And the way we do that is we sit all day, we minimize our distractions, and if you get really serious, you even try to do dream yoga where you meditate while you're sleeping. So I think the idea that we should maximize the knowledge that we gain or the wisdom that we gain has been there for a long time, and the way that we do it today, which is kind of amplified by the fact that never in the history of our planet has anyone had access to kind of information that you have right now in this moment at your fingertips just by picking up your phone. Just go back 50 years and no one would know what you don't necessarily know that, but you could find out at least traditions and old practices and secret practices and meditations that it were just unavailable to the general public except for a specific few people who had the ability to gain this kind of information. So what we then take it as to be our best path forward to progress in our spiritual practice, to feel more joy and happiness, and to become something different than what we believe we are today, is to gather as much information as possible. Now, the easiest way to do this, and the way that I did this, and I've seen many other people do, is that we listen to podcasts or YouTube videos. And when we do this, we just put in our headphones or earbuds, and then we just let the wisdom stream into our ears without any effort. So we go throughout the day and we have them running in the back time. This really maximizes the kind of the amount of information that you can get in. Instead of sitting down and actually listening to it, we had it running in the back of our mind so that we can hear all of this wisdom over and over and over. The problem with that, though, is that if you look at our senses, which in Buddhism we view it as all of the sense doors, we say they have inertia, or they kind of, if you start beating your skin like this, and you beat it over and over and over and over, ever after you stop beating it, you can feel that it's tingling, it's kind of stingy, your senses or your skin are agitated. So it takes some time for that to settle down. Now the same goes for all the other senses, the ears. If you keep listening to things, they get bombarded with this sound and they get agitated from that, so it takes time for them to calm down. But what most people don't consider a sense is actually our mind, which in Buddhism and meditation is considered a sense door. It takes in information and then spits out information. So when you keep giving it information over and over and over and over, you're really agitating the mind, making it spin up even faster. Even if this is good information, even if it's something that is useful for you, you are still agitating the mind. And so you might have already guessed the first major drawback of having this information stream constantly running through our ears, or reading or watching, is that you're getting overstimulated. Your senses are getting completely overstimulated by having this information running through your ears the whole time. And this will wear you down eventually. At first it seems like, well, this is obviously worth it, because you're introduced to ideas and philosophies that you probably would have never come up with yourself. But you can hear these old teachings from ancient masters and, well, not so masterful teachers, and just gather your own philosophy from that. And there's myriad of practices and that were just unheard of before that you can now implement into your own practice. The thing that happens when we have all this knowledge is that we believe, oh, okay, I know now, I understand how this works because I have all this information, I understand it. I can say that, oh, it's very simple. If I believe that I am important, then I have a self, so I just believe I don't exist, and then I don't have a self, because that's kind of intellectually how it seems to work. But that's not that's not wisdom. It's not something you're trying to really understand. And it's not even about knowledge. It's about something that you're supposed to realize. And having all this information in some ways may help, because you are introduced to aspects and ideas that you wouldn't have been before. If you were very stuck to the idea that what I need to do is I need to go to school, get a job, find a partner, get kids, work really hard my whole life, and then retire, and then I die, and if I'm lucky, maybe there's a heaven, I go somewhere else. Now, if you change that belief into like, hey, wait a minute, there's more happening right now. There's something going on in this lifetime, and you can do something about your awareness of the now that is happening right here and right now. That can be a good thing. But then after you've understood that, then the downside is that the mind gets fed. It really gets all this information, and you boost the ego, the idea of self, that I know this now. I understand this because I've heard all these great teachers and masters describe what it's like, and now I understand what it means to have no self, what it means to be enlightened, and I already understand this, so I don't need to practice it. And that is, of course, a major drawback, because what we're trying to do is not to understand or learn something. We're trying to change our perspective of the world around you, or our senses, how we interact with them. And this kind of tricks you into believing that you've already done that because you have all this information. This is a bigger problem in some traditions than others, where you emphasize wisdom or knowledge. I came from the Theravadan Buddhist tradition, where information is considered very highly, and it's all about the teachings of the Buddha are the purest form. So people then study those texts, and they study them in the old languages, believing that that will make them more wise. But in fact, that might not be the case. But let's say you get past this. You don't get caught up in the trap of believing that information is the thing, and what I sometimes call information pornography, that it's this need to get more information. So you just put your earbuds in, and I myself, I remember I loved to have them in when I was going. I work as janitor, and I work outside a lot, and I like to have them in and just walk around, and I could hear all these amazing teachings and all these amazing ideas. And it felt like when you're listening to this, I'm focused on my path. I'm developing, I'm moving forward. So I'm maximizing my potential by actually practicing spiritually while I'm doing something else. While I'm out walking, I'm having these wisdoms churning in the back of my mind so that I can learn something, so that I can understand something. I can visualize a wiser me that implements this knowledge and creates good in the world and becomes a better person. And it makes you feel like you're actually moving forward even though you haven't done anything. You're just listening to this information. But that's not even the biggest problem. There is something that is even a bigger downside than tricking yourself into believing that you're already done, which is that listening and always having this running in your mind, in your ear, is taking you away from your senses. It's taking you away from experiencing your life, from experiencing what is happening right now, with the beliefs that there's going to be a better now in the future when something else is going to happen. So the biggest problem might not even be the two I mentioned before, but actually taking away your awareness from this moment is something that is truly detrimental to your own practice. And listening to all this information, constantly believing that you're going forward, is actually keeping you away from progressing. But it's not all negative. Let's say 2 examples. One, you're out walking in the forest and your mind is really negative. It's spitting out thoughts of, I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm not good for anything, why am I here, what's the point of life, I don't know what I'm doing here, I just want to go away from all of this, and I can't achieve anything, I am completely unloved and unlovable. Now that's not really a good mindset to walk around with, and you probably believe all these thoughts that are running. Now, let's take the second example, where you're out walking in nature, but you're listening to some great master, let's say, or teacher. Let's say you're listening to someone who teaches like Eckhart Tolle, or someone who talks about how it's all in the present moment, and how there's love everywhere, and how you are love, and how many of these ideas are actually very positive and they're meant to help. So when you're now out walking in nature, even though you're not aware of actually being in nature, you are listening to this positive train of thought that is cutting off your stream of thoughts that you had before, which was very negative and very much putting you down, to instead have you focusing on something that's more lighthearted and happier and better, which will help your practice. It can even offer meaning, because listening, I had, when I was a monk, many times people came up and they said, oh, I became a monk instead of, I became a Buddhist instead of whatever religion they had before. And I was never in the monastic scene because I was a Buddhist. I was there because I wanted to understand the mind. But for some people, they came to Buddhism and they said, oh, I completely love Buddhism because it made me feel at ease with having lost my partner. There were some elderly people who their partner had died, and then when they believe that they will go on, and it's all a passage with being reincarnated, rebirthed and coming back in another lifetime, well, that can offer solace and soothing of the mind. Believing that you know what will happen after. And I say believing because we can never truly know what happens after. There are lots of different ideas and philosophies about this, and no one can ever really be more right than anyone else. So when you start in a bad place, when you're feeling really down, drowning yourself in wisdom or positive thoughts and ideas is a really good way to start. It can help you cope. It can help you enjoy this moment of being here, because you stop all these patterns that you have and you start some other pattern. But eventually you have to let go of this. You have to let go of knowledge and actually start living, experiencing, not believing that I need to learn something else so that in the future I can be happy. I can't be happy now, but I will learn something that will make me happy in the future. There is a term in mathematics called a tangent. It's if you have a circle and you have a line lying on top of that circle. The tangent is the smallest point where this bar touches the circle. And the philosophy that I have, let's call it the tangent philosophy, is that what we are trying to do when we're discovering or becoming comfortable with ourselves is actually incredibly simple, or uncomplicated. It's incredibly uncomplicated, but it is ridiculously difficult to do. So when you listen to these things, you actually are trying to understand all of this, when in fact it's just one little thing that we need to do. But if I would tell you that all you need to do is just feel good, you just need to stop feeling bad, that actually is true. But we can't do that because we have this sense of self coming and saying like, no. I can't just feel feel happy, because don't you know what happened to me? Don't you know what people have done to me? Don't you know what's happening around me? And all of these things connect with the self saying like, no, you're not allowed to feel happy or feel good now. So you need to do all these things first. You need to do trauma therapy. You need to go into shadow practices, and you need to do all these things in the world, and then you can allow yourself to be happy. So we have to have all these ideas to believe that we are understanding what it is that we need to do, when in fact spiritual practice is simple and uncomplicated. It is this part here. It's all about being happy now, enjoying being here, enjoying being alive in this moment. And there is no conflict in that. There is no struggle. It is just being, experiencing without needing to achieve anything outside or inside. It's just you being here, moving around with your senses, experiencing things, and that is inherently enjoyable. So the tangent philosophy brings us back from all this idea that we need to have so much wisdom and information to understanding that actually in the end it is very simple. It's just this tiny point that touches the bar that is lying on the circle. And for me, that is what I call the distortion method, which is that the problem, the thing you're actually working with, is this sense of self that is pushing the world around you. Inherently, the easiest way to say it is that it's when your desires don't match your reality. The thing happening here in between, that is the tangent. That is the smallest thing that you can go down to with your practice and actually have something to do. And ultimately, even that would disappear. This may all sound confusing and easy to do in one way, even though you don't understand how to do it. I developed a system for doing this that I call the distortion method. I even made a video about it where I go into a bit more detail of what it actually means and how you can do this for yourself. And it's just a short video. So if you want to watch that, I recommend you watch this video here next, where I explain it in more detail.